How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Ganji. Welcome to another episode of Tier Talk. Guys, there's a lot to cover today. We're going to revisit the David and Celeste case, D4VD and Celeste, which sadly Celeste was by the time of her discovery, a 15-year-old girl found in the frunk of his Tesla. There's a few things I want to cover here today. One is I'm definitely going to talk about the frunk. Talk about if someone was to choose to hide a body, why would they choose the front part of a Tesla? But the first thing I would like to talk about is the order of an investigation, how we're kind of caught in the middle, because usually investigators want to have the cause of death first. Then I want to talk about the timeline, because now we have a little bit more definitive information from the captain of the LAPD. So we believe that her body was placed in that vehicle, and there's a timeline for how long the vehicle's been out there. And then I want to discuss a little bit about the frunk. And then also the release of the body. What does that tell us? What do law enforcement know? What does law enforcement know? So when it comes to understanding what happened to Celeste Rivas Hernandez, the very first question investigators usually answer is going to be the cause of death. Without that, everything else is speculation. So once cause is determined, the next step is time of death. And from there, how she entered the vehicle, the last known movements of that vehicle, the Tesla data, and eventually motive and opportunity. That's the proper order. But right now, in Celeste's case, we don't have the luxury. We don't have the information of how she died. Information is very limited. What we do seem to have is evidence of possible concealment. So in other words, we're not starting at the beginning of the investigative order. We're picking up somewhere in the early middle, at the point where she was already discovered inside this Tesla right here. And so that changes how investigators are going to approach this case. So instead of building forward from cause of death, investigators have to work a little bit backwards. If concealment is what's visible, the first question becomes, who concealed her, when, and how? That's what everybody's asking. And that's a natural question to be asking. That leads back to, was she alive or deceased when she entered the car? And that's the other question that we want to know. If deceased, we're going to circle back again. What was the actual cause of death and where did it occur before she was placed in the vehicle? So again, the order has been a little bit altered, but ultimately it starts to bring us back to how did she die? So the backward reconstruction means the vehicle isn't just a witness, because the vehicle is a witness. It's the starting line. Tesla's telemetry, door logs, trunk data, and any surrounding surveillance are what gives investigators the breadcrumbs to retrace steps. From there, they peel away layers of the timeline in reverse, hoping to eventually land on the foundational questions of cause and time of death. That's why right now, while they're waiting for the full results of the autopsy, they're focused on, well, how did her body get there? Who was the last person to speak to her, etc. So, and here's why that order is so relevant. If you jump ahead too quickly to motive or blame, you risk misreading the evidence. For example, saying someone must have murdered her, which a lot of people thought right off the bat, because the way it came out in the news, even came out that she was dismembered, and we don't know that yet. It could be just decomposition. But a lot of people thought because of how she was discovered, she must have been murdered. Later on, we discovered, well, it could have been concealment. I mean, even about a week or so back, we even did a panic. Maybe she overdosed and they didn't know what to do, and someone panicked and they put her in the frunk because it was just such a sloppy concealment. So either they're immature or maybe they just did not know what to do in that moment. And by the way, anybody could have motive for that, not just David, because David, he provided everybody with a lifestyle there. So a connection with a minor at so many different levels could give anybody motive. Even if they did not outright kill her and overdose, what's a minor doing next to you? That's a little reckless, so you don't want to have that connection. So again, for example, saying someone must have murdered her without knowing if she overdosed and was concealed is dangerous. It frames the case on assumption instead of fact. The order protects investigators from bias. It forces them to build each step on top of something proven. So when they finally get to motive and opportunity, they know they're asking why something happened, not if it happened. If you notice this on social media right now, a lot of things we're asking is if, because we don't have the death. We don't have that strong foundation. We don't have the why, So with that said, our foundation is a bit weak. So everything that we put on top of that foundation is going to be an if, because we really have nothing strong for it to hold on to. That's why law enforcement, they don't really run on speculation. They're looking for the strongest foundation possible, and they probably don't want to run with anything until they have that foundation. That foundation is going to be that cause of death. Once they get the cause of death, now there's an anchor there, something that they can lean on. So now if they start to push forward with charges or whatnot, depending on which way it goes, it's a stronger foundation than just simply what ifs that could be challenged. So while the proper order is cause of death, time of death, entry into the vehicle, into the frunk, movement of car data, motive, and theories, in this moment, we're forced to start in the middle. We start with concealment, and then we push backwards, asking who put her there, when and why, until we can finally reach those earliest, most critical answers about Celeste's death. Now, there are some questions right now that I think we want answered, questions to just reflect on. These are not answers we're going to have in the moment, but a lot of people know we're chasing after them, so they throw out a lot of weird shit out there just so they get the clicks. But the answers for these questions are not out there yet. So I got 4 questions, I think, related to this that the public really wants to know regarding this young girl here, Celeste Rivas. If concealment is our starting point, what does that say about intent? Does hiding a body automatically suggest a crime, or could it point to panic? If Celeste entered the car alive, what does that mean about her last hours? And if she was placed there after death, who had the means and access to do it? And we want to know that. That's why we did a video yesterday. And again, it's fed. The video was inspired by a comment that may have been left by Josh Marshall. And people haven't verified it, but we kind of just did an episode on it. And people are placing him because people want answers. They want to know who could have done this to this girl. But right now, they just want to know who put the girl in the frunk, because we don't know how she died. So a lot of us has shifted from trying to understand what caused the death to who tried to conceal it, because, we have to wait for the results of the autopsy. So then you have, should investigators focus first on who concealed her or keep pushing backwards to what caused her death? Which question truly unlocks the case? It's going to always be what caused her death, because that's going to lead you to every follow-up. But right now, because we don't know the cause of death, all this other stuff is just pulling from thin air. But once you get the cause of death, that's going to be your compass. And then eventually that's going to start bringing forward enough evidence for you to trap the people that have been lying. Maybe some of the people that said she wasn't a young kid. She told me she was 19 and from the University of Southern California. Everybody's going to distance themselves from the fact that she was a minor, because if they can't deny the fact that they knew her or saw him with her, they're going to find another way to minimize their involvement. So it's going to be the age thing. And I know some people may view it differently, but she looks like a young kid to me. Doesn't look like a 19-year-old student. But to some, maybe she does. So again, with limited information and no confirmed cause yet, how much weight should we... Oh, I did that. No, I didn't. Sorry. With limited information and no confirmed cause yet, how much weight should we give to digital evidence like Tesla notifications versus physical evidence from the autopsy? And I'll tell you something, I learned a lot about Teslas from trying to understand this case. This is the vehicle she was found in. I got a chance to go to a Tesla lot and learn a little bit. So we're going to go into that a little bit too. So I want to go over briefly the timeline, because now that the captain of the LAPD Sheriff's Department, the Homicide Department, the Homicide Department released some information, that gives us something we can lean on. And he basically did say, and I got the full quotes here, that she was placed there and could have been there for several weeks. So what happened between the day? So let's do this. Let's do the quick timeline here. So what happened between the day the Tesla was parked and the day Celeste was found? That single window is the case. Below is the, let's see, is the mark for the timeline. All right, so so outside the timeline, I also put down 3 scenarios that I think could be possible. And by the way, these scenarios are more related to her concealment or placement. Everything else would really just be a guess, how she died again. But let's just talk about the vehicle. So we believe the vehicle could have been parked for several weeks, right? So the location I have here is Bluebird Avenue in Hollywood Hills. August 27, 2025, parking enforcement marks the Tesla as stationary. And they kind of do the chalk thing on the road. So they know if the car moves, the chalk goes on the tire, kind of lifts up from the pavement, and you know the car's been moved. September 3rd, citation for a 72-hour parking violation because they probably saw that the chalk wasn't picked up by the tires or taken off the pavement. And then by September 5th, the vehicle was towed to the impound. So that's right here, Hollywood Tow. And then September 8th, 2025 at 12:30 p.m. So a couple of days later, because I think it was the weekend. So let's say Monday. I believe September 8th was a Monday. Officers at the impound respond to a foul odor and with a warrant, search warrant, find human remains inside the Tesla trunk. And the human remains belong to this young girl. And the car was registered to the man to her left, David Anthony Burke. So the investigators estimate that LAPD says the car had been parked for several weeks and Celeste had likely been deceased for several weeks before discovery. Final confirmation awaits autopsy and toxicology. So I got some quotes that I got from People magazine or an article from People that comes from Captain Scott M. Williams. And here's what he says. We know for sure that Celeste Rivas Hernandez died and someone placed her body in the front trunk area of David Burke's Tesla. So he knows for sure she died and she was placed in the frunk. She was placed in the frunk. That means that someone decided to place her body, probably for concealment, inside the trunk. That's something that's worth knowing. And again, it's been several weeks. That's important too. That timeline is extremely important. We know that the Tesla had been parked at that location from which it was towed for several weeks. So it is very likely Celeste Rivas Hernandez had been dead for several weeks prior to her body being discovered. And I'm assuming this, that they've gone through the data, the cameras, and I believe they know for a fact at some level that car wasn't moved for those several weeks. And I guess as they check the data, they're probably can maybe pinpoint, but they're just waiting for the cause of death when there was activity in the Tesla that could have maybe fit well within the timeline of the placement of her body in the frunk. So the Los Angeles County Medical Examiner has not determined a cause or manner of her death. So we don't know for sure if someone has any criminal culpability for her death beyond the concealment of her dead body. And then the captain, that's what the captain added, sharing that the LAPD Robbery Homicide Division is still probing the case. He also added a couple other things. William confirmed a search warrant was served at a residence near where the vehicle was towed. We know that because they moved out soon after. And then regarding speculation about any relationship between Celeste and David, Williams said, as far as their relationship, it would be premature for me to say anything. We're looking into everything. So again, they don't run on speculation. So they may see a connection, but they don't automatically see a developed relationship. We ran with that a little bit because of what we're being shown, but they're going to want to know facts. So of course, they're going to probably say there's a connection. Even at a very surface level, she's in his car. But in order to push forward with some type of relationship, especially of this manner, which could lead to criminal charges, we better be on point. We better not push too soon. We better have facts. So it makes sense for me to say that it's a bit premature in trying to figure out they had a relationship because, again, it would be most likely leading towards a relationship that would be illegal because of her age and his age. So we have a question that comes out of here that is important for us to reflect on. Was Celeste already dead when the Tesla was parked? Did she die while the car sat there? or was the car used later to hide a body? Investigators are testing 3 main scenarios to answer that. So I want to break down each scenario. So real quick, these are 3 scenarios that they have to consider. They have to consider first, did she die while the car sat there? Was the car used later to hide a body? Or was Celeste already dead when the Tesla was parked? So let's go with scenario 1, which is death happened elsewhere, but the body moved into the Tesla. And that's going to be the stage concealment. So guys, these are all about concealment. It's not about how she died. Right now, we have to wait until the autopsy comes back. So now we're going to focus on, who concealed the body, because they're going to know something. So it doesn't mean that they're the ones that killed her, but they're going to know something. So the idea here is that Celeste died at a different location. Someone put her body in the trunk, drove to Bluebird Avenue, and abandoned the car so discovery would be delayed. So why does this fit? The frunk is hidden and sealed, so it's ideal for delaying discovery. If no one returned for the car, despite tickets, that supports a plan to park and walk away. And lividity and rigor patterns and absence of blood in the cabin, which is the front and passenger seat, would fit a body moved post-mortem. What would prove this if this was the case? Well, you got the tested telemetry, showing frunk opens and closes around the time the body was placed. Then you got the GPS route data placing the car or a suspect at other locations earlier. And then you got the surveillance or neighbor video of who parked the Tesla. And then you got the forensic transfer evidence. So again, if she was off-site, not in the car, then you would have maybe different soil, fibers, wrapping material, just whatever's not from the car. So the narrative here is calculated disposal, either premeditated or panic-driven, but deliberate concealment after death. Guys, I'd still push maybe like a week and change ago, the overdose theory. I truly believe that. I see it happen a lot in my line of work. There's some strong stuff out there. And then again, in panic, I got to get rid of the body. I don't want to do it. I'm not going to call 911 because I'm not going to expose my connection to a minor. So there's a lot of things here that fit. All right, let's go to scenario 2. Celeste died inside the parked car. So now you got neglect, overdose, or just environmental. I don't know how likely this is, but investigators would have to look into this also as a possible scenario. So the idea was that she was alive when the Tesla was parked and died inside the vehicle days later. Overdose, heat, or asphyxiation. Later, someone moved her into the frunk and abandoned the car. Maybe a scenario like this could be an overdose in the vehicle. Maybe she was living out of the vehicle. Maybe David was trying to hide her. Maybe in times when she couldn't be at the house, she lived out of the vehicle. I mean, she is a runaway. Could that be possible? Maybe. Could she have, maybe be inside the vehicle, smoke up a little bit, get high, and died inside the vehicle? So now you have living and the death, and then he comes out and sees her there, and like, oh my God, and then panics. Why is this tricky? It would require someone to return, move the body into the frunk. The frunk is hard to access, and then leave. And I want to run into that later because I'm going to talk about the frunk later because when we talked about concealment, I kind of looked at a Tesla and I kind of understood, like, if I was to hide a body, try explaining that to the Tesla dealer, what would be the best way to hide a body? If she had been visible in the cabin during enforcement check, someone should have noticed. So why wasn't she seen? So that's why it's reason to believe that she probably wasn't in the cabin. What would prove it? Telemetry showing cabin access, gap days later, and then the frunk access. Then you got the toxicology consistent with maybe a fatal overdose or a medical event. Evidence of drugs, vomit, or other biological material in the cabin. So maybe they'll see that. And heat, stress markers, or decomposition patterns consistent with being inside a sealed car. So what's the narrative here? A tragic, unplanned death followed by panic, concealment. Someone knew the car's location and chose to hide the body instead of calling for help. And as I said in my other video, it makes sense why they wouldn't want to call for help, because it would expose at minimal a connection that would be very hard to explain. Scenario 3 is the car was used later as a temporary hiding place. So the idea here is the Tesla sat for days or weeks. Somebody returned and used the Frunk, as a dead drop to hide the body, relying on the car's long stay status to obscure discovery. That's another least possibility, but it still has to be explored. So why does this fit? It matches several weeks of her being deceased. Then there's the gap between parking enforcement and discovery. It suggests someone knew impound timelines and exploited them, and then could involve multiple return visits, handling, or itinerary of concealment. Hey, guys, there could be a chance that maybe, guys, this is just really thinking outside the box here, but you never know. And maybe the setup could be let the car be there, get impounded, and once it goes to the impound, maybe they're thinking the car will get destroyed or the car will get lost amongst other cars, and then her body would just lay undiscovered. And then it'd be tough to prove at that point, how the body got there. Now it could be no longer traced to his property, even though it's still registered his car. So there's a lot of scenarios here. It's just amazing how people can try to put all these different scenarios together. But again, when you know what the death is, it gives you a strong foundation to now look at these scenarios from a different light and to give you more evidence to lean on. So when people come up with all these different stories, you have a way to showcase some conflict. So the narrative here is deliberate, opportunistic concealment, more calculating, and indicates some knowledge of towing and impound behavior. I want to talk about the forensic clock. Investigators overlaid an hour of the window. Again, I'm not an expert in these areas, but once I get more followers, I would love to have the experts come on and discuss this. But in the comments section, feel free to add, because I'm going to build from the dialogue anyway. So add in the comments. Give me something so I can work from too. And guys, for these last couple of shows, thank you guys for watching. I appreciate it. It keeps me motivated to create more. So I love the fact that I'm gaining more subscribers, because I don't know, it works. Because I know if I can get my message out to bigger people, or our shared message, I think there's a difference here. When I retire out of corrections in 2 years, I would like to try to create a greater impact by doing this. So again, with the forensic clock, so you have autopsy or trauma findings, signs of strangulation, blunt force, or asphyxia, versus signs of overdose or natural death. This is what you would see with the autopsy. And by the way, guys, and we're going to go into this a little bit more deeper later, the body was given back to the family. So there's stuff that has been figured out, and yet we still don't have charges. And I'm going to explain that. The toxicology, so you have toxicology, you have drugs, metabolites, and concentrations that help estimate time from ingestion to death. Then you have entomology and decomposition. So insect stages and decomposition patterns are temperature dependent and give a post-mortem interval estimate. And the packaging transfer evidence, tape, aging, sequence of fabric fiber layers, soil, pollen that indicate where and when a body was moved. Look at all this stuff. There's no way, guys, when you plan to do something, especially in panic, because it's more improv technically, more just in the pressure of the moment, that you're able to perfectly cover all this up. So when you combine these biological clocks with digital clocks, so you got the Tesla telemetry, the phone GPS, the app logs, the security cameras, the timeline gets much narrower. Timeline gets much narrower. Let me get this little thing from the, we don't need this on the screen no more. Hold on, guys. Let me just, because I had all these things chaptered out, but we're just going through it. So I'm just going to get rid of that. So I want to talk about why the Tesla Frunk matters. So if I'm in panic, why would I choose the front part of this vehicle? And I think I have another picture. Here it goes. Look at that small space. Why would I choose that? Why would I not choose the trunk? Bunch of things. So the Frunk, which is the front trunk. So digitally sealed, from what I'm being told, cannot be opened from the cabin without electronic access. It's invisible from the outside. It's ideal for concealment because it's not routinely checked during tow or by passerbys. The rear trunk is easier to access from cabin or by breaking a window, less secure. And guys, if you look at this, I don't know if this works out with the Model Y, but this is, or whatever it is, you can actually see what's in the trunk through the glass, where the Frunk you can't. I don't know if that's for all Tesla models. And the cabin is the most visible and most likely to be noticed quickly. Just peek through the windows. Because the body was found in the Frunk, investigators treat concealment as the central theory. The Frunk is neither accidental storage nor a place someone will be left in without someone noticing. So I think that's a good assumption, that if you put the body in the Frunk, that is total concealment. Because the other two, the trunk and the cabin, you could see it. You can see the body. It's glass. How investigators can open a Tesla trunk and get telemetry. So I just say, you know what? So when they got called to the scene on the 8th, and they got the search warrant, if this vehicle is so protected, because the trunk, it's hard to access from inside the vehicle. It's not like the trunk or just going into the cabin. Cabin is, as again, the front and passenger seat. So what did the police have to do to finally open the Frunk? So you have the owner's app key, if that's available, easiest, non-destructive. Then you got the Tesla law enforcement response. Tesla can remotely unlock with legal process. So again, the warrant would have helped them with that. So maybe I think that's what could have happened. They got the warrant and they were able to work with Tesla to pop it. There's another way that's a little bit more physical. Is a 12-volt jumper method, quick, non-destructive field technique to restore power and open the Frunk. And then you got the forced entry, which is the most physical, which is the last resort, causes damage, and must be justified. Telemetry to request. So GPS route, lock, unlock events, Frunk open, timestamps, key authentication, app activity, Sentry video if available, and then the charging history. So again, I want to just quickly go over, because a lot of people are saying, well, this is so sloppy, how they concealed the body. So again, I truly think that the concealment could have been done in panic, something unplanned. It doesn't always have to be an overdose. It could be maybe something abusive that went sideways. Again, that's what we have to find out, what happened to her. So just again, with the scenarios, you have overdose plus panic concealment. So fear of exposure, drugs, statutory issues, as I mentioned, leads to hasty concealment and messy digital physical trail. And guys, I'd really like you to check out my videos on the overdose one and the different motives. I broke that down, I thought, pretty well. And then you got the violence in a secret relationship. So intimate partner dynamics, secrecy and power imbalances can produce calculated disposal. So again, when the police see, or the law enforcement sees, that there's something beyond a superficial connection or a coincidence, and they start to see that there's a relationship, they're going to approach every angle of that relationship. And then you got the third-party disposal or framing, using the victim's car as misdirection, sophisticated, suggests prior planning or forensic awareness. There are some people that believe David is being set up. I don't know how true that may be, but there are people that believe it. And again, when I did the motive episode, I did cover part of those in more detail. What can we responsibly say now about this Tesla thing? Tesla parked on Bluebird Avenue in late August, 72-hour violation cited September 3rd, towed September 5th. Body found in the Frunk September 8th, a day after her 15th birthday at impound, which was right here. This is Hollywood Tow again. I have some pictures here. And then LAPD estimates several weeks deceased before discovery. And then you got the official cause, manner of death, and toxicology results are pending. Now, I want to give you some takeaway from this investigation. And then we're going to go into the release of Celeste's body. What does that say? So the choice to use the Frunk, a small sealed, electronically controlled compartment invisible to casual inspection, strongly indicates intentional concealment. Whether that concealment was impulsive panic after an accidental death or a calculated effort to hide a homicide depends on the confluence of forensic clocks and digital logs. So if telemetry or cameras show no return visits, the body was likely moved before parking. And that's scenario one. If telemetry shows re-entry and later front access, scenario 2 or 3 becomes likelier. And if phone data and surveillance show repeated visits, scenario 3, the iterative concealment. And that's what gains weight. And if you guys have questions what iterated concealment is, think of it like layers of cover-up. So first concealment, the body might be wrapped, bagged, or hidden in one location right after death. Then the second concealment is later the person handling it decides that first hiding spot isn't safe, so they move it, maybe into the Tesla Frunk. And then third concealment, if the car sits too long, they might return, add more tape, new bags, or reposition the body to further delay discovery. So why it matters, forensics can detect. Forensics can detect it. Investigators may find multiple layers of wrapping, newer tape over older tape, fresh adhesive over dirt, tool marks at different times, or digital data showing multiple access events, and it suggests planning or panic over time. Instead of one quick act of disposal, iterative concealment points to someone returning and adjusting their cover-up strategy, which shows a higher degree of intent or criminal awareness. So in short, iterative concealment equals hiding the body or evidence more than once, layering concealment efforts over time to delay or mislead discovery. So that's interesting. So that means they keep on coming back and trying to check on any what's going on with the body. And that would be interesting if they were doing that. And that would all be told. That would all be seen out. That's more likely for scenario 3. So the difference between justice and a cold case will come down to the coroner's report, toxicology, etymology, Tesla logs, and neighborhood video evidence. So now what are the unanswered questions for us to reflect at this point? So we don't got the cause of death, right? Was Celeste's death the result of violence, overdose, environmental factors, or something else entirely? Time of death. Did she die before the Tesla was parked, while inside the vehicle, or later when someone returned? Movement of the body. Who moved Celeste into the frunk, and why did they choose that compartment instead of the trunk or cabin? Access and telemetry. What do Tesla digital logs show about who last opened the doors, trunk, or frunk, and when? The surveillance gaps. Did cameras capture who parked the Tesla on Bluebird Avenue or anyone returning to it afterwards? The digital footprint. What do Celeste's phone records, social media activity, and communication reveal about her final hours and who she was with? The motive. Was this concealment driven by panic after an accident, or was it a calculated act tied to a secret relationship or a criminal plan? Why the frunk? Was the decision to use the frunk simply opportunistic, or was it chosen specifically because it is so secure and hidden? Third party role. Could the Tesla have been used as a staging ground to frame or misdirect investigators towards its registered owner and the timeline precision? How much can forensics, clocks, toxicology, decomposition, etymology tighten the true window of death, and will they line up with digital data? These are questions we all can reflect on. Feel free to answer them in the comments. But the summary for this part is the article that I put up on top here examines whether David Burke or D4VD might have received the Tesla app notification. Oh, sorry. Someone sent me a link to two updated articles from TMZ. One was the one with the captain, and the other one was an article about a push notification. Very vague, just kind of let you know Tesla offers push notifications when the front was open. So I added it to this, but I think it's pretty superficial. Just letting you know what the Tesla could do. So the article examines whether David Burke might have received the Tesla app notification alerting him if someone placed the body in the trunk of his Tesla during a time he was away on tour. I mean, maybe it could be relevant, but I just think that, the article today, sometimes they just push for all these crazy updates. I think they get a lot at once and then they push them out single so they could just get more views, because this is something that could have went in with everything else that the Tesla offers. Instead, it's a whole separate article. Tesla security system includes sensors for trunk open close events, and if the trunk is open for an extended duration, the app could push a warning. In this case, investigators are exploring whether such a notification could have occurred while David was on tour, possibly giving him awareness of suspicious activity. The article points out that this idea is speculative and hasn't been confirmed by law enforcement. It also notes that David has stated he is cooperating with the investigation, but he has not been named a suspect as of the reporting. So again, maybe there is an angle to this. I apologize. Maybe there is something important here. So in this case, investigators are exploring whether such a notification could have occurred while David was on tour, possibly giving him awareness of suspicious activity. That may be something interesting to explore. If that was the case and he got an app, that would be interesting to see how he would view activity on his car. Would he be concerned because it's his car? Or would he just say, well, let it out, everybody uses it. So, or maybe he doesn't even have the app installed. So maybe that part would be a bit interesting. Okay, last part is what the release of Celeste's body really means, because they did release the body. So what has been done? What do we think they know? And what are we waiting for? Because this leads to the charges, technically. So when the medical examiner released Celeste Rivas Hernandez's body back to her family, it marked the end of the autopsy phase. But the release doesn't mean investigators have answers. It means the physical exam is complete, and now the case depends on toxicology and lab work. So the autopsy is complete. So what investigators may already know is this. Now remember, the body was seriously decomposed, but the autopsy is the first deep dive into the body. From it, investigators could know. I actually have here now know. But if you're an expert in the field, let me know. They would know if there's obvious trauma, none reported publicly, stabbings, shootings, or major blunt force injuries would have been immediately visible. Asphyxiation signs, coroners check for, this word gets to me, petechichi. I know you guys have helped me with this word before, but again, it's tiny red spots, foam in the lungs, and fractures in the hyoid bone. I think that's here. Sorry. I don't know why I pointed there. That's here. None have been announced. And defensive wounds, no indication of cuts, bruises, or scratches consistent with the struggle. Since the cause of death remains pending, it likely means no clear evidence of homicide was seen. Now we got the toxicology that's still pending, what they're waiting for. So toxicology is the chemical testing of blood, urine, and tissue samples. This takes weeks but provides definitive answers. They're looking for opioids like fentanyl, heroin, oxycodone, and carfentanil. Stimulants, cocaine, meth, and MDMA. Depressants, alcohol, benzodiazepine. Prescription drugs at dangerous or unexpected levels. Synthetics or designer drugs. Newer substances that don't leave obvious physical signs. Guys, when people are smoking this marijuana, it's laced with so many different things. It's hard to determine what it is that could lead to a fatal dose. And then metabolite ratios, which reveal not just what was used, but how recently. Other lab work may include histology, so that's tissue study for organ damage or hidden trauma, gas analysis for carbon monoxide or other inhalants, and entomology, if needed, to confirm how long she has been deceased. This stage is what will give investigators something definitive to declare cause of death. Cause and manner of death right now is still pending. If homicide injuries were clear, the coroner would have ruled already. That's what I believe. If a natural medical condition was obvious, they may have ruled that too. And pending means we don't yet know if this was a homicide, an accident, or an overdose. So why no arrest yet? Police need probable cause backed by evidence, not just suspicion. Concealing her in the trunk is criminal and suspicious, but by itself, it doesn't prove how she died. If investigators arrested too soon without a confirmed cause of death, prosecutors could risk a weak case that collapses in court. And by waiting for toxicology and lab results, they're making sure any eventual charges are airtight. The pending status doesn't mean investigators doubt foul play. It means they're being careful, keeping multiple scenarios alive until science closes the gap. And the likely reading right now, autopsy's done, no glaring signs of homicide. It's my opinion. Lab results are critical, will reveal drug toxin or hidden causes. Guys, remember, he said possibly no culpability. So maybe we don't have signs of a homicide. Lab results are critical, will reveal drug toxin or hidden causes, could be an overdose. Investigators are cautious. They cannot treat this as a murder until toxicology confirms whether she was killed, overdosed, or succumbed to environmental causes. So I got 7 more questions that we need to reflect on, and this will bring us to the end of the show. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. What will toxicology show? Was Celeste's death linked to fentanyl, another drug, or poisoning, or will results come back clean? How exactly did she die? If not drugs, what other medical or environmental factors caused her death? Was there hidden trauma? Could microscopic tissue studies reveal suffocation or subtle force not visible in the initial autopsy? Who moved her into the trunk? Can Tesla logs, phone records, or cameras identify when and by whom her body was placed there? Why the concealment? Was the frunk used out of panic after an accidental death or to deliberately cover up a crime? Timeline precision. Can forensic clocks, decomposition, insects, lab chemistry pin down exactly when she died, and will toxicology give investigators the probable cause they need to pursue charges, or will it raise more questions instead of answering them? Guys, there is a lot here. I am giving you guys everything I got for us to think about, what needs to be answered. Again, I'll still look for all the updates, but this is a very complicated case to follow. So what I'm trying to do is maybe put us in a direction that gives us a stronger foundation. But I do agree with the fact that until you know how she died, you don't really have a strong anchor. So instead of trying to get the why, we're figuring out the what ifs, if. And that only leads to speculation. As always, guys, the show is Tear Talk. Come on, guys. Let's bring our army, our Tear Talk army. Bring them, subscribe, interact, engage. Let's build some momentum. And as always, guys, stay safe.